John, back to you. You told us what an estimation model is. Now, can you tell us a bit? I mean, the kind of challenges that you, as the chair of this particular group, you are facing.
My version of the question to Luca was, what can go wrong? The list is long. To start, these measures or indices of resilience capacity, are they being measured over the right time frame? Are they being measured over the right scale? I think in much of the discussion, both yesterday and today, there's a default to going to household level resilience as the capacity we want to look at, but of course resilience can also be an individual characteristic, a community characteristic, a regional, a national, or sometimes international characteristic. If we stick just on, for example, households' capacity to be resilient, we have issues. Are we drawing these indices or constructing these indices from the right samples? Even if we have the right samples, do we have non-sampling error, which is going to confound the construction of these indices? Does this non-sampling, do these non-sampling errors arise? Because as Gerald quite correctly pointed out, no one thought it was worthwhile to actually pay the enumerators a decent wage, so they understandably did not do a good job. Is it the case that in fact respondents, knowing how this information is going to be used, are in some sense trying to game the system? My experience has been is that when we've explained to people that we're doing survey work and we are from IFPRI, they say, oh, you have no money, so we don't get the same problems with gaming. But I would imagine if this is being done by a government, or for example an NGO, where in fact respondents perceive there are resources available, that may shape their responses. We talk about developing these indices, but all indices, as with all indices, we need to be very clear about whether or not we have strong reliability in these measures. We need to have a sense as to whether or not, in fact, we have validity in these measures. Another way of phrasing this is we know very little about the potential out-of-sample properties of these estimators or their predictive power. To give an example, I spent much of my adult life either living in Western Europe or North America. And for those who are my age or a little older, a little younger, at various points in time we've lived through various recessions of varying degrees of severity. An axiom in some sense of kind of faith for people thinking about careers has always been, well, you know, if you work in the civil service, you know, you may not always get really big pay raises, but you're always going to be safe. You're never going to lose your job. And in both North America and Western Europe, that was true for every recession for the last 40 years until the last one. And all of a sudden, the people who lost their jobs, you know, very significant numbers, were civil servants. So a real danger when developing these indices of resilience capacity is in some sense we're measuring them vis-a-vis the last set of shocks and stressors and not necessarily being forward-looking. The final point, again, is to note the way in which a number of our discussions default is that perhaps because we're holding these meetings in Addis Ababa, when people talk about shocks, they very often default to say, talking about drought shocks. But we all know that poor people in both rural and urban areas actually face a wide range of shocks and stressors. And what might be a good index of resilience capacity for one type of shock might be a poor index for another.